Commander Sarah Chen stared at the flickering screen in front of her. The coffee in her mug had gone cold hours ago, but she barely noticed. Her eyes tracked the strange readings that danced across the monitor like ghosts in the darkness of space. "Ma'am, you seeing this?" Marcus leaned over her shoulder, his voice tight with concern. He was her second in command and the only person on this forgotten outpost who never complained about their assignment. Sarah nodded slowly. The numbers did not make sense. Something massive was moving through the dark space beyond the galaxy's edge, something that should not be there. The energy signatures were unlike anything in the Council database. The outpost hummed quietly around them. It was a small station barely large enough for 50 people, floating at the edge of known space. For the past 12 years, Sarah and her crew had maintained the Deep Space Relay Network. It was boring work. The kind of work the Galactic Council gave to humans because they thought humans were not good enough for anything else. Sarah remembered the first time she met an alien from the Council. She had been so excited, so hopeful. The creature was tall and elegant, with skin that glowed soft blue in the darkness. It had looked at her with 3 crystalline eyes and spoken directly into her mind through telepathy. "You are the humans? How unfortunate. Your species is quite ugly." That was 15 years ago. Things had not improved much since then. The Council called humans the dogs, when they thought no one was listening. Sometimes they called them the primitives, or the embarrassment. Humans had no telepathy, no natural armor, no bioluminescence, no hive mind connections. They were weak and fragile compared to the other 12 species that ruled the galaxy. The Council had discovered Earth 50 years ago and offered humanity a place among the stars. But it was not the partnership humans had dreamed about. Instead, they got the jobs nobody else wanted. Cleaning waste processing stations. Mining asteroids in dangerous zones. Watching empty space for threats that never came. Sarah's outpost was one of hundreds scattered along the galaxy's rim. They maintained the communication relays that let the Council species talk to each other across impossible distances. It was important work, but the Council did not see it that way. They sent supplies once a month on automated ships. No messages. No thank you. Nothing. "Should we report this?" Marcus asked, pointing at the screen. Sarah bit her lip. The readings were growing stronger. Whatever was out there, it was getting closer. She reached for the communication panel and opened a channel to Council Central. The response came 30 minutes later. A hologram appeared above her desk, showing an Etherian diplomat. The alien was beautiful in the way all Etherians were, with flowing robes made of living light and a face that seemed carved from pearl. "Outpost 773, state your business." The voice dripped with boredom. Sarah explained what they had found. She showed the data, the energy readings, the trajectory calculations. She spoke clearly and professionally, the way she had been trained. The Etherian's expression did not change. When Sarah finished, there was a long silence. "Perhaps the dogs are chasing shadows again," the diplomat finally said. "Your primitive sensors often malfunction. Return to your maintenance duties and stop wasting Council resources with false alarms." The hologram winked out before Sarah could respond. Marcus slammed his fist on the desk. They didn't even look at the data. Sarah stared at the dark screen. The readings were still there, still growing stronger. Something was coming. Something bad. And the galaxy's greatest civilizations had just dismissed the only warning they would get. She turned back to her monitors and started recording everything. If the Council would not listen, she would at least have proof. Proof that the ugly dogs had tried to save them. Sarah could not sleep. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw those energy readings growing stronger and stronger. 3 days had passed since the Council dismissed her warning, but the signals had not disappeared. They had multiplied. She walked through the quiet corridors of the outpost. Most of her crew was sleeping, trusting her to keep them safe. The weight of that trust felt heavier than usual tonight. In the observation room, she found Lieutenant Kim working at the main console. The young woman looked up with dark circles under her eyes. "Commander, you need to see this." Kim's hands shook as she pulled up the latest scans. Sarah's blood ran cold. What had been 3 signals was now 300. They were organized in a perfect grid pattern, moving with mechanical precision toward Council space. These were not natural phenomena. These were ships. "Run a deep analysis," Sarah ordered. "I want to know everything about them." For the next 6 hours, her team worked frantically. What they discovered made Sarah's stomach twist with fear. The ships were ancient, older than any Council civilization. They moved through space using technology that should not exist. And they were heading straight for Praxis 7, the Council's biggest industrial world. 10 billion aliens lived there. The strangest part was how Sarah's team had found them at all. The Council used advanced quantum sensors and telepathic detection grids. Those systems saw nothing. But the humans used old-fashioned radio telescopes and electromagnetic scanners, technology the Council considered primitive and useless. Those primitive sensors could see what the advanced ones could not. Whatever stealth technology these ships used, it was designed to hide from quantum and telepathic detection. It had never been designed to hide from radio waves. Send emergency broadcasts to every Council world, Sarah commanded. All channels. Every frequency. Marcus hesitated. Ma'am, we'll be in trouble for this. The Council specifically told us to stop. I don't care anymore, Sarah said quietly. 50 billion lives are in those systems. If we're wrong, they can court-martial me. But if we're right and stay silent, we're murderers. The messages went out. Sarah personally recorded a video explaining everything, showing all the data, begging someone to listen. She sent it to military commanders, planetary governors, anyone who might take action. The responses came slowly. Most were automated rejections. A few were angry messages telling her to stop spreading panic. One Zenthari officer, a young male named Kreth, sent a private message saying he believed her but lacked the authority to mobilize any defenses. 2 days later, the fleet arrived at Praxis 7. Sarah was in the observation room when the emergency broadcast started flooding in. Her hands gripped the edge of the console as she watched the horror unfold through the relay network. The mysterious ships had appeared without warning in orbit around Praxis 7. They were massive, each one the size of a small moon, covered in dark metal that seemed to absorb light. Within minutes, they began their attack. Council defense fleets scrambled to respond. Thousands of elegant warships, pride of 12 civilizations, rose to meet the threat. Sarah watched the battle through intercepted transmissions, praying the Council would win. They did not stand a chance. The mysterious machines cut through Council ships like they were made of paper. Every time the Council tried to coordinate their defenses using telepathic networks, the machines hacked into those networks and turned the ships against each other. The elegant, efficient tactics that had protected the galaxy for millions of years became their weakness. Within 4 hours, Praxis 7 went silent. 10 billion voices stopped screaming all at once. Sarah stared at the empty channels with tears running down her face. Marcus stood beside her, his jaw clenched tight. They didn't listen, he whispered. Across the galaxy, panic spread like wildfire. World after world reported the same massive ships appearing in their skies. The Council civilizations, so proud and advanced, were being slaughtered. And they finally understood that the ugly dogs had been right all along. Admiral James Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the ESS Defiance and watched the chaos unfold across his screens. 7 Council worlds had gone dark in 3 days. The machines that everyone now called the Devourers were unstoppable. They consumed everything in their path, turning entire planets into raw materials for more of their ships. But James was not running. He was a soldier, and soldiers did not run when people needed saving. How many ships can we mobilize? He asked his tactical officer. 214, sir. That's everything Earth has. James smiled grimly. 200 ships against a fleet that had destroyed thousands. The Council must think humans were insane. Maybe they were right. Send the order. All human vessels are to converge on my position. We're going hunting. Back at her outpost, Sarah received the mobilization order. Her small maintenance station was suddenly transformed into a command center. The relay network she had maintained for years now became the lifeline connecting human forces across vast distances. Commander Chin, Admiral Okonkwo's face appeared on her screen. We need you to coordinate communications. The Council's telepathic networks are compromised. But our old radio systems still work. You're our eyes and ears now. Sarah straightened in her chair. After years of being ignored, humanity was finally being asked to fight. We're ready, sir. The human fleet was small and their ships were old. While Council vessels were sleek and beautiful, human ships looked brutal and ugly. They were covered in thick armor, packed with redundant systems, and armed with weapons the Council considered primitive. Nuclear warheads. Kinetic missiles. Chemical explosives. The first battle happened near the refugee planet Sanctuary 9. Millions of Council civilians were fleeing in transport ships when the Devourers arrived. The elegant alien ships tried to defend them but were quickly torn apart. Then the humans arrived. All ships, break formation, Admiral Okonkwo ordered. No patterns. No predictable movements. Fight like your life depends on it, because it does. The human ships scattered in every direction, each captain making their own decisions. There was no telepathic coordination, no hive mind connection. Just 50 individual commanders with encrypted radios and a whole lot of anger. Sarah watched from her outpost as the battle unfolded. The Devourers tried to predict human movements the way they had predicted Council tactics. They failed. One human captain charged straight at a Devourer ship, ramming it at full speed while screaming defiance over the radio. Another ship used its damaged reactor as a bomb, sacrificing itself to destroy 3 enemy vessels. A third captain flew in circles firing randomly, making no tactical sense whatsoever. It was chaos. It was madness. It was human. And it worked. The Devourers had been built to fight logical opponents. They could calculate every efficient attack pattern, predict every strategic retreat. But they could not understand why a captain would sacrifice their ship to save people they had never met. They could not predict decisions based on rage, hope, and stubborn human pride. The humans saved the refugee fleet. They lost 40 ships doing it, but they saved millions of lives. For the first time since the invasion began, the galaxy had hope. Messages started flooding into Sarah's outpost. Council commanders requesting human tactical advisors. Alien captains asking to be taught how to fight like humans. The Zenthri Empire offered to build ships using human designs. Even the proud Etherian sent a message asking for help. Marcus read the messages aloud, his voice full of wonder. They're asking us for help. Actually asking. Sarah looked at the casualty reports. So many humans dead already. Good people who had been called dogs and primitives their whole lives. Now they were dying to save the aliens who had mocked them. Send response to all requests, Sarah said quietly. Tell them we'll teach them everything we know. Tell them humanity stands with the Council. She paused, then added, and tell them we're not dogs. We're wolves. And wolves protect their pack. Sarah stood in a conference room she never thought she would see. The Grand Council chamber on the station orbiting Zenther Prime was built for the galaxy's most important leaders. Its walls were made of crystal that showed the stars beyond, and the air smelled like flowers from a dozen different worlds. 3 months ago, no human would have been allowed here. Now Sarah was teaching alien generals how to fight. Around the table sat commanders from all 12 council species. The Etherian High Marshal, who once called humans ugly, sat quietly taking notes. The Zenthri War Chief, whose people had laughed at human technology, now asked Sarah questions like a student. Explain again why your Captain Rodriguez flew directly into the enemy formation, the Etherian asked. Our tactical computers say it should have resulted in certain death. Sarah pulled up the battle recording. Rodriguez saw that 3 civilian transports were trapped. The logical choice was to retreat and save his own ship. But Rodriguez was a father. He had 2 daughters back on Earth. When he saw those transports full of children, he didn't think about logic. He thought about his daughters, the Zenthri finished quietly. Exactly. He charged in, drew all enemy fire to himself, and gave those transports time to escape. His ship was destroyed, but 4,000 civilians survived. Sarah's voice caught. Rodriguez had been her friend. The room was silent for a long moment. This is what you call fighting with emotion, the Etherian said slowly. Using feelings as weapons. We don't see emotions as weaknesses, Sarah explained. Love makes us protect others. Anger gives us courage. Fear keeps us sharp. Hope lets us try impossible things. The Devourers are machines. They understand efficiency and logic. They cannot understand why someone would die for strangers. The lessons continued every day. Sarah taught them human tactics that made no logical sense but worked anyway. Feinting attacks that looked like mistakes. Retreats that were actually traps. Sacrifices that saved many by losing few. The galaxy began to change. Zenthri shipyards started building vessels to human specifications. Thick armor instead of elegant shields. Redundant systems instead of efficient networks. Weapons that were simple and brutal instead of advanced and delicate. Etherian pilots learned to fly unpredictably, breaking their perfect formations. Krillian soldiers trained in hand-to-hand combat, something they had considered barbaric before. Even the telepathic mindseers started using encrypted radios, cutting themselves off from their comfortable mental networks. The phrase spread across every battlefield and every survivor camp. Fight like a human. But victory came with a terrible price. Sarah received the casualty reports every day. 60% of Earth's military forces were gone. Ships that humanity had built over generations destroyed in weeks. People she had known, people she had trained with, all dead. The attack on Earth itself came on a Tuesday. Sarah was reviewing tactical data when the alarms screamed through her outpost. The Devourers had found humanity's home world. She watched helplessly from across the galaxy as the battle raged. Human ships fought desperately in orbit while Council fleets rushed to help. For the first time, aliens were dying to protect human civilians. The combined fleet held. Barely. But the cost was devastating. Sarah's outpost was hit 3 days later. The Devourers sent a strike force to destroy the communication hub. Her crew fought with everything they had. Marcus died buying time for others to evacuate, staying at his post until the very end, calling out enemy positions even as the walls collapsed around him. When the rescue ships arrived, only 23 of Sarah's 50 crew members were still alive. She stood in the ruined observation room where she had first detected the Devourer fleet months ago. Everything was burned and broken. Marcus's coffee mug still sat on his console, somehow untouched by the destruction. A message came through on her personal communicator. It was from Admiral Okonkwo. Commander Chin, we've located the Devourer core mind. We're putting together a strike force. We need our best. We need you. Sarah picked up Marcus's mug and held it tight. The ugly dogs had proven their loyalty. Now it was time to end this war. Sarah's ship drifted through dark space with 15 other vessels. Half were human, half were Council ships crewed by aliens who had learned to fight like humans. They were hunting the most dangerous target in the galaxy. The Devourer core mine sat hidden in a nebula beyond the rim. It was a massive structure, 10 times larger than any planet, controlling every machine ship through quantum connections. Intelligence said it had existed for millions of years, destroying civilization after civilization. All ships, listen carefully, Sarah spoke into her communicator. Her small vessel had been rebuilt after the attack, patched together with parts from 6 different species. It was ugly and mismatched just like humanity itself. We get one shot at this. The core mind can predict logical tactics, so we do what humans do best. We improvise. Beside her sat Kreth, the young Zenthari officer who had believed her warnings months ago. He had volunteered to serve on her crew, along with an Etherian pilot and a Krillian engineer. They had become her new family after Marcus died. Commander, I am honored to fight with you, Kreth said quietly. The strike force plunged into the nebula. Immediately, thousands of Devourer ships appeared, forming a perfect defensive grid. The battle was chaos from the first second. Sarah's ship spun and twisted through enemy fire. The Etherian pilot flew like she was drunk, making no sense at all, and the Devourer targeting systems could not lock on. Other ships charged forward, retreated randomly, fired at empty space to confuse sensors. 3 human ships were destroyed in the first minute. Sarah gritted her teeth and kept flying. They fought for what felt like hours. The strike force lost half its ships getting through the defensive perimeter. But they got through. Sarah's vessel, smoking and damaged, broke into clear space. The core mind filled her view screen. It was beautiful and terrible, a machine so vast it had its own gravity. Launch the payload, Sarah ordered. The weapon humanity had built was not a bomb. It was a virus, created by combining human computer science with Council quantum technology. But it did not destroy systems or erase data. It taught emotions. The virus spread through the core mind's networks in seconds, introducing impossible concepts. Love, sacrifice, hope, courage, despair. All the messy, illogical feelings that made humans human. The core mind tried to process what it was receiving. A captain sacrificing their ship to save strangers. A mother fighting impossible odds to protect her children. A soldier staying at his post while the world burned around him, calling out warnings to save others. These actions made no logical sense. They violated every principle of efficient survival. They were beautiful and terrible and completely incomprehensible. The core mind could not understand. Its perfect logic shattered trying to calculate why someone would die for others. The quantum connections flickered, failed, and went dark. Across the galaxy, every Devourer ship stopped moving at the same instant. They drifted in space like dead metal whales, their war finally over. Sarah's ship limped back to Council space with the survivors. She expected a quiet return, maybe a small ceremony. What she found shocked her to her core. Every Council world had declared a day of remembrance. The Grand Council itself stood waiting when her ship docked. The Etherian High Marshal, who had once called humans dogs, stepped forward with tears streaming down his luminescent face. Commander Sarah Chin, he said, his voice carried across every communication channel in the galaxy. On behalf of 12 civilizations, we ask your forgiveness. We were blind. We were arrogant. We called you ugly and primitive. You saved us anyway. Behind him, a massive statue was unveiled. It showed a human soldier in armor, standing tall and proud. The inscription read in every council language. They were called dogs. They proved they were heroes. Never forgotten. Never again dismissed. The High Marshal continued, humanity is hereby granted full council leadership status. Human tactical academies will be established on every world. And we propose moving the council capital to orbit Earth, so we never forget who taught us to fight with heart. Sarah looked at the faces around her. Kreth stood proudly beside her. The Etherian pilot smiled through tears. Across the galaxy, humans and aliens celebrated together. She thought of Marcus, of Rodriguez, of all the humans who died proving their worth. They had been called ugly dogs their whole lives. In the end, they became the galaxy's greatest protectors. The shock was not that humans could fight. The shock was that the galaxy had been wrong about them all along.